The wizard stood, staff in hand. He gazed into the starry void, pondering one of the great secrets of the universe. "Why?" the wizard asked. "Why do I keep getting myself into these things?" Jake Mundane didn't look like a learned and terrible wizard. He looked like an edgy college kid. He was a little over average height, but skinny. Dirty blonde hair flowed down over his shoulders. He wore a long leather trench coat, black jeans, and a maroon turtleneck. An iron medallion hung around his neck. He was clean-shaven, and his neatly trimmed fingernails were painted black. Looking closer would only make him seem even less wizard-like. He moved like a dancer, all smooth motion and sensual grace. His brown eyes glittered with warmth and humour. His default expression was a hint of a smile, like he was thinking about a joke he'd heard earlier that day. Nothing about him screamed practitioner of the arcane arts. Nothing about him screamed suicidally stupid either, but here he was. "Are you sure about this, Jake?" A voice cut through the wizard's musings. Female. Pretty. Very dead. "I think this might be a stupid idea." Jake rolled his eyes. The dead woman had a point, but he wasn't about to admit it. "You've been saying that for 3 weeks, Jules. If you were going to talk me out of it, you'd have done it by now." Jake was standing in the airlock of his ship, the Wicked Game. It was an old Bridger-class freighter. It was an ugly, rickety, rectangular block with engines. It looked like it should fall out of the sky, but it was the best he could get on short notice. The Wicked Game clanked and groaned ominously as it propelled itself through the void. The interior was dim and dingy. Lights flickered on and off, giving the impression that the ship was haunted, which it was, technically. "No, Jake," Julia corrected. "I've been saying your half-assed slapped-together rescue operation is a bad idea for 3 weeks. Now I'm talking about your even dumber plan to assault a hidden alien station by yourself. You're not even bringing any guns." "I don't need a gun, Jules," Jake pointed out. He took another look at the sensor readings on his wall console. The moon he'd been aiming for was tiny, less than a third the size of Earth's moon. The moon itself was unremarkable, just a round hunk of rock orbiting a gas giant. The installation on that moon was another matter. If I wore one, it would just explode anyway. It wasn't a big facility. A round dome roughly 2 miles across. The dome didn't show up on sensors. If Jake's tracking spell hadn't pointed him at the thing, he never would have known it was there. A scrying spell had revealed the dome was surrounded by turrets, weapon platforms, and sensor arrays. It was definitely a secure facility, probably military, but he couldn't be sure. The facility was deep in Neural Republic space. The Neurals weren't at war with humanity, not yet, but they weren't exactly friendly either. Jake could only think of a few reasons they would kidnap a human and bring her to such a place. None of those reasons were good. I know. Julia sounded exasperated. "Your stupid magic transport will detonate anything with a power source, which is why you're planning to assault a secret neural military base with no guns, by yourself, like a moron." "Why, Julia?" Jake gasped. "For a moment there it sounded like you were worried about me." "Of course I'm worried, you jackass!" Julia snapped. "If you die, I'm stuck haunting some stupid freighter in the middle of Neural Republic space. Or worse, they could blow up the ship. Then I'd just be haunting a debris field." "It's not that bad, Jules," Jake reminded her. "I've got you set up so you can fly the ship. You can get out of here if things go south." "I won't get very far," Julia pointed out. "You're the only one that can recast the illusion, making us look like a neural ship." She let out a dramatic sigh. "How did I let you talk me into this?" "I didn't," Jake reminded her. "Tagging along was your idea." "I wouldn't have had to if you hadn't sold our house to buy this stupid ship," the dead woman groused. "The new owners would probably exorcise me." "I like you too, Jules." Jake grinned and adjusted his sunglasses. It felt a little silly wearing sunglasses in space, but they were a convenient vessel for his communication spell. It wouldn't do any good to take the station if he couldn't call Jules to come pick him up. "Are we ready?" "You tell me," said Julia. "I'm not a wizard." "I didn't mean the array," said Jake. "I'm doing the final checks right now." The array was a complicated set of circles and runes that had been meticulously carved into the deck and the walls of the airlock. The symbols connected to a metal box, which was also engraved. I mean, are you ready? I know I'm asking a lot, Jules, but I do need you. I'll be fine, Jake, said the woman. I don't like this plan, but I'll do my part. I've got your back. Thanks, Julia. Jake was glad she'd insisted on coming along. Jake didn't have a lot of friends. Julia's constant grumpy concern choked him up a little sometimes. I appreciate you. Jake looked over the inscriptions on the metal box. The box was connected by cables to a device on the outside of the ship. The device was a Light Rider ZX-40, a very expensive piece of magitech. It had cost more than the ship. Light Riders converted matter into sunbeams. The sunbeam spell would last until the light hit something solid. Then the spell would break, and whatever got beamed would be back to normal. Light Riders were usually used to transmit cargo, but the tech had been invented to insert troops into war zones. It was an unpleasant and dangerous way to travel. A beam of light is a fragile thing. If the light gets distorted or refracted, you'd appear in pieces. If you hit something reflective, you might bounce back into space and spend the next 100,000 years as a semi-conscious burning beam of light. Light Riders have been used a lot in the Mage War. The Mage Corps called it riding the lightning. They didn't call it that because it was fun. Jake was very familiar with riding the lightning. He didn't like it much. He took a deep breath and checked his gear one last time. It wasn't much. Jake had several potions, 2 rings, a silver knife, a short sword, and his staff. Not a cool magitech staff either. It was just plain wood with runes carved in it. Rounding out the gear was a small bag of crystals and his enchanted sunglasses. Jake typed into his wall console, checking the Light Rider's trajectory. He made sure nothing was about to drift into the way. Satisfied, he activated the array. Alright, here we go. Stay on course for now. Don't head for the station until I've cleared out the defenses. If things go sideways... I know. Julia sounded annoyed. Get out of here and contact the military. What? No. Jake smirked. If things go sideways, you're supposed to come rescue my ass. Shut up and go already, Jules quipped. Jake got the feeling she was rolling her eyes. Be careful. I always am, Jake lied. He closed his eyes and let his will flow into the circles. He added his magic to the array, following the lines and cables to the Light Rider. Working magic in space was tricky. Magic was produced by life. Habitable planets were full of the stuff, but space? Not so much. Fortunately, science had found a solution. Mage crystals. Pure magic condensed into matter. A hefty chunk of them were powering the Light Rider. Jake's magic touched them, guiding the forces of creation into the array. He let the power build. The gliss of the array came to life, glowing orange. A deep thrumming vibrated its way through the airlock. Jake didn't really need to guide the magic himself. The Light Rider was designed to automate the spell. On the other hand, this was his last chance to catch any problems if there was something wrong with the array. He wasn't about to take chances. It took a minute for the spell to build. When the thrumming reached its peak, Jake gave the command that would activate the enchantment. Transportari! Jake was suddenly on fire. Being turned into a sunbeam was extremely painful. It felt like every nerve in his body had been set on fire at the same time. Normally, the sensation only lasted for a tiny fraction of a second, but the wicked game was 10 light minutes from the research station. Jake was treated to 10 excruciating minutes, time he spent rethinking his life choices. The sunbeam struck the brown rock of the barren moon about 10 feet from the hidden station's dome. Jake was suddenly back in his body, but the burning sensation persisted for another several seconds. Jake gritted his teeth, focusing his will on his medallion. The medallion was a holdover from his military days. A simple iron disc with his name, Iden number, and birth date on the front. The back of the medallion was engraved with a few basic but very handy enchantments. Jake focused on one of those enchantments and created a bubble of pressurized atmosphere around himself. Next, he reached into the pouch on his belt. He pulled out a small mage crystal and slotted it into the ring on his left hand. An effort of will attached the ring's enchantment to the crystal. It would make him invisible to sensors. He hoped. Jake knew it worked for human tech, but he'd never dealt with the neurals before. "Jake?" Julia's voice rang in Jake's ear, courtesy of his magic sunglasses. "Are you okay? Did you make it?" "I'm here," Jake replied. He held out his left hand, focusing his will on his senses. He didn't feel any magic coming from the dome. Good news. It's not warded. Warded? Julia sounded suspicious. What would have happened if it was? "I'd probably be dead already," Jake told her. "At the very least, it would be a lot harder to get in." "You couldn't have mentioned that before?" Julia sounded annoyed. "No point," said Jake. "There was no way to check without getting closer." He shrugged. It was pretty unlikely, though. Neurals are a tech species. They've got no magic to speak of. Most species that reached the stars were either all magic or all science. Trying to mix the two tended to end badly. Only humanity and 2 other species had managed to use both without destroying themselves. After the Mage War, humanity was the only one left. The sole wielders of Magitech. "Anyway," Jake continued, "the place isn't warded. Are the glasses working?" "Like a charm," said Julia. "I can see everything you see." "Good." Jake pulled out a potion. He checked the label to make sure he had the right one. Ghost form was scribbled on it. "We'll need to stay quiet once we're in. Keep an eye out, but don't say anything unless it's an emergency." The moon's gravity was low enough that drinking was a problem, but Jake was prepared. He slipped an airtight seal and a straw over the bottle and sipped as hard as he could. The potion set his stomach to roiling. Cold seeped into him. Jake's body turned transparent. He stepped through the wall of the research center's dome. He found himself facing a second, slightly smaller dome. Jake stepped through that one too. He waited 5 more seconds for the potion to wear off. The interior of the station wasn't that much different from what he'd seen from humans. Steel walls painted white. It was well lit and meticulously sterile. The atmosphere was a little more humid than Jake was used to, and the artificial gravity was a little lighter, but overall it wasn't too bad. Jake was in a room full of metal crates. Some kind of storage space. Perfect. Jake hadn't been able to bring his tracking spell with him. It was still plugged into the wicked game. This would be a good place to cast a new one. He pulled a pouch out of his pocket and extracted a pair of hairs. Jake gathered his will. "Invenir, invenir, invenir," he chanted. He didn't really need to use Latin for spells. He just liked the way it sounded. He did need to speak, though. Jake's brand of magic was all about the will and the word. He didn't have to chant long, maybe 15 seconds to gather the power and form the spell in his mind. When he felt the spell had enough charge, he ate the hair. Then he whispered, "Invenir, lucere." He felt it then, a warm tickle in the back of his mind. He knew which direction Rachel was with the same instincts that used to tell him which way was north back on Earth. The spell wouldn't tell him how close the girl was, or the best way to get to her. That was fine. A general direction was all he needed. Jake pulled another crystal out of his pouch. His tracking spell didn't take a lot of juice, but casting a veil was another matter. He had a limited amount of internal power, and he didn't want to run dry. Jake connected to the crystal with an effort of will and said, "Insinuatis." He felt the veil ripple into place around him. His ring was hopefully hiding him from sensors, but now no one would see, hear, or smell him. Probably. Jake listened carefully at the door to the strange room. He didn't hear anything. He opened the door and stepped out. He was in a corridor. He didn't see anything that would give him a clue what this place was. Jake supposed there was no help for it. He started walking, following the general direction of his tracking spell. The corridors were empty at first, but soon enough, he started to see people. The Neurals were an ugly bunch. They were purple frog people with bulging yellow eyes and moist skin. They all wore white. The soldiers were in white armor, sealed armor, with clear glass faceplates. There were a lot of them, and they were heavily armed. They patrolled in groups of 8 and spoke into comms devices every 5 minutes to check in. The other neurals were in void suits. Hazmat suits? Some kind of sealed suit. They were bulky and came with glass bubble helmets like something out of a bad 19th century sci-fi. Sensors and strange equipment dangled from harnesses draped over their shoulders. Scientists, maybe? They were a grim bunch. Quiet. Jake only saw a few of them. Jake held his breath the first few times he saw someone, but the veil held. He wandered the corridors without incident for 10 whole minutes. Then he found a security checkpoint. There were 16 guards with guns in hand. Another pair sat at monitoring stations, and 2 more stood ready at a set of scanners. Jake kept the veil up and watched. He had to wait for nearly an hour before anyone used the checkpoint. He saw the scientist walk through the scanner, then wait while a guard passed a different scanning device over him. When that was done, one of the other guards at the security console typed in a code and pushed a button that opened the security door. Okay, now he knew how to get the door open. The question was what to do about the guards. Jake didn't think his veil was good enough to sneak in with a scientist through all that scanning equipment. If he wanted to get to Rachel, he was going to have to take out security. Killing the guards would be the simplest solution, but he didn't want to do that yet. He still had no idea what this place was. Best to keep things non-lethal for now. Jake retreated down the corridor until he saw an empty room. He stepped into it and closed the door behind him, thinking. The Neurals were taking security very seriously. If the guard station went silent, Jake figured someone would notice within minutes. He was going to attract attention no matter what he did. To hell with it then. If Jake couldn't be subtle, he might as well go big. Jake pulled a formation pen out of his pocket. It looked like a basic marker, but the ink had been enchanted to stick to any surface, regardless of gravity or atmosphere. Jake didn't need a formation for basic spells or quick and dirty invocation, but circles and symbols would take some of the strain of his mind and greatly increase the precision and power of his magic. Jake started with a simple circle. The ritual circle was the most common and basic formation. It didn't have to actually be a circle. The symbols used in the spell were arbitrary and depended on the wielder. Jake knew some wizards that used triangles, and one that insisted on using a rhombus, but for Jake, it was circles. Jake drew 2 more circles around the first. Then he started in on the runes. Jake had been taught to use Norse runes, but the type didn't matter, so long as you could keep the meaning clear in your head. Setting up the formation took half an hour. It took an hour of chanting, and 5 large mage crystals before the spell was ready. It was a lot of energy. Jake hadn't tried anything this big in years. Even with the circles, Jake's will struggled to contain it all. Jake was drenched in sweat by the time the spell was ready. He said a single word. Somnum. Latin for sleep. He tapped the formation with his staff, willing the spell to release. The mage crystals crumpled to dust. The energy flooded out of the formation with a rush. It flooded out of Jake, too. He swayed for a moment, supporting himself on his staff. While spells were fueled by magic, shaping and channeling that magic took a lot of energy. Casting a spell strained Jake's body and mind the same way lifting something heavy would. He gave himself a minute to recover before he recast his veil and stepped back into the corridor. Jake made his way back to the security checkpoint. He liked what he saw. All 20 of the guards were slumped over. A few of them were snoring. It worked, Jake said aloud. You can talk now, Jules. What did you do? Asked the dead woman. Sleep spell, Jake explained. Should hold for a few hours. Won't somebody notice when the guards don't check in? Julia asked. There's no one to notice, Jake told her. I went big. Everyone within 3 miles is unconscious. Julia was silent for a moment. I didn't know you could do that. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Jake shrugged. No good for combat, though. It takes too long to cast, and people with magic of their own can resist it. He stepped over an unconscious guard and typed in the code to open the checkpoint door. Don't change course yet, though. I don't want some automated defense turret blowing my ride out of the sky. The security door hissed open. Jake walked into yet another corridor. He found another set of guards on the other side. They were sleeping. Jake thought about taking one of their guns, but decided against it. Chances were they were rigged to only work for neurals anyway. A short walk took Jake to a large, clear window. The window showed a big open room, an infirmary. There were 10 doctors and half a dozen patients inside. Neurals. Jake peered in through the window and came very close to throwing up. "What the hell is that?" Julia gasped. "It's what I was afraid of," Jake said grimly. He saw a neural whose arm had been replaced with a large, hairy, clawed appendage. Another patient was writhing. He was hooked up to a machine that was pumping blood into him. The other 4 patients were warped. Their bodies were all twisted up. They didn't look dead, but they probably wished they were. "The Mage War showed everyone what supernatural troops can do," Jake explained. "Like most tech nations, the Neural Republic killed all their magic beings centuries ago. If they want magic for their soldiers, they'll have to get it from someone else." "Super soldiers," Julia guessed. "It's a super soldier program." "That's what it looks like," Jake agreed. "My guess is they're kidnapping preternaturals and running experiments. Trying to transfer the powers. I just hope we got here in time." "You don't know?" Julia asked. "The tracking spell will find the body whether she's alive or dead," Jake explained. "That's..." Jake could hear Julia's consternation. "You mean we're going through all this trouble to save your ex-girlfriend, and she might already be dead?" "Client," Jake chided. "We're saving our client, not my ex." "She's not a client unless you're getting paid, Jake," the dead woman pointed out. "You sold our house for this." "I know." Jake grimaced. He started walking again. "I had to, Jules. I've got to know." Jake found more infirmaries, more labs. Eventually he came to another security checkpoint. He typed in the code. The door didn't open. Jake tried again. No dice. "Well, that's not good," he quipped. "A different code for each checkpoint?" Julia hummed. "They really take security seriously here, don't they?" "It's a real problem," Jake admitted. He slotted a mage crystal into his staff. "Are you going to break through the door?" Julia asked. "No," said the wizard. "If it's like the last door, it'll be 6 inches thick, with layers of silver and iron mixed in with the steel. More importantly, there's a good chance it will set off an alarm, or some kind of automated defense." "I'm not sure blowing a hole in the wall would be better," Julia pointed out. "I'm not blowing holes in anything," Jake told her. He leveled his staff at the security console. His will touched the mage crystal, guiding the power for a specific set of runes. Open Sesame. The unlocking spell was a complicated working. The difficulty of the spell scaled with the quality of the lock. A simple padlock was easy. A high-tech safe was a lot harder. An alien security console would be a real bitch. Fortunately, Jake didn't have to get it right on the first try. The spell wouldn't do anything until he found the right combination. He cast the spell continuously, sifting through probabilities as rapidly as he could. It was the magical equivalent of brute force hacking. It took 2 small-sized crystals and 20 minutes, but Jake opened the door without setting off any alarms. The window in the next corridor revealed a human. A dead one. Jake looked closer. The corpse was shriveled, almost mummified. The body was too withered to determine age or gender, but the remains of a black skirt and fishnet stockings suggested it had been female. Jake gritted his teeth. He was about to move on when the dead girl moved. "Did you see that?" asked Julia. "I saw," said Jake. He tried to open the door. It was locked. Jake wasted 10 minutes trying to unlock the stupid thing before he realized the device to unlock it was a biometric scanner. No spell of his was getting through that. To hell with it. Jake was tired of stinking around anyway. He gripped his staff with both hands and channeled some power into it. He swung the staff like a baseball bat, hitting the glass with 5 times the force he could produce with his body alone. His staff bounced off the window so hard, he lost his grip on it. "I can see why you didn't try to break the door down," Julia quipped. Jake ignored her. He drew his short sword. He grimaced as he slotted in another mage crystal. He was running low on the things. Jake used his will to connect, and blue runes lit up along the blade. The short sword hummed, vibrating in his hand. The short sword also bounced off the window. "Damn," said Julia. "Who made that thing? Space dwarves?" You're not helping, Jake groused. He tapped the sword against the window. The enchantments on the blade should let it cut through almost anything. He peered closer. The blade wasn't touching the window itself. It had stopped a quarter-inch from the glass. A force field. The door didn't have a force field. Cutting it open didn't take long. Cutting the door open set off an alarm. Green lights flashed. Sirens blared. An automated voice announced, "Warning! Containment breach! Containment breach! Specimen containment room 1343. Is that going to wake anyone up? Julia asked. Nope. Jake ignored the alarms and entered the room. Not till the spell wears off. He examined the corpse. It was on a thick slab of steel table. Its hands and feet were encased in large metal restraints. The body was small, either a teenager or a short adult. Its head was still shifting from side to side, milky eyes staring sightlessly. Its jaw opened and closed, revealing fangs. Vampire, said Jake. What happened to her? Asked Julia. My guess, Jake grimaced. They took her blood. All of it. That's... Julia sounded worried. That's really bad, Jake. You need to get out of there. She needs help, said Jake. And she might know something. She's a monster, Jake, Julia warned. If she gets out of those restraints, she's going to eat you. Vampires are people too, Jules, Jake chided. They've been citizens for 400 years. I'm not being racist, Julia chided back. I'm talking biology. She's been tortured and drained of blood. She'll be a mindless monster until she feeds. Fair point, Jake conceded. He dug around in one of the room's cabinets and found a glass beaker. A little more digging produced a funnel. You could feed her one of the scientists, Julia suggested. It would serve them right. Won't work, said Jake. Vampires require human blood. Animals and aliens will just make us sick. He set the beaker on the table. Not to worry, though, I can bring her around. He reached for his short sword, then thought better of it. Too sharp. He pulled out his silver dagger instead. I'm not sure there's enough blood in your body to do that, said Julia. That's why I'm going to cheat. Jake dropped a medium-sized mage crystal into the beaker, then held his left wrist over it. He made a careful cut with the dagger. Blood flowed. Vampires feed on blood, he explained, but it's really a way to absorb life force. Jake fed his will into the mage crystal, mixing with his blood. Magic isn't quite the same thing, but it's close enough you can use it to supercharge the blood. It's an old mage core trick. Jake bled into the beaker until it was half full. His will dissolved the last of the mage crystal. Jake found something that vaguely resembled a first aid kit in one of the cabinets. He wrapped his wrist to slow the bleeding. Now to get the blood to the vampire, preferably without losing a hand in the process. Jake called up his magic. He cast a quick spell. A band of force pressed the vampire's head down against the table. The creature didn't seem to notice. Jake put the funnel in the vampire's mouth, then pulled the beaker of blood into it. The reaction was immediate and violent. The vampire bucked, straining against the restraints. The head snapped forward, barely slowed by Jake's force spell. He barely yanked his hand back in time. The creature jerked around wildly for several seconds. Then it stopped. Its milky eyes changed to a vibrant blue. They fastened on Jake's medallion. Holy shit, the vampire breathed. They sent the mage core? Not exactly, said Jake. It's just me, and I'm a civilian now. Are you lucid? Lucid? The corpse lay back on the table. She closed her eyes, but her voice was clear and steady. Rather pretty, really. I don't know. I might be hallucinating right now. I'm also freaking starving. Her eyes snapped open. Wait, what about the others? I don't know yet, Jake told her. You're the first person I found. He fixed her with a look. Are you lucid, young lady? Young lady? The vampire huffed. I'm 26. I've been 26 for 300 years. Can I trust you not to eat me or not? Jake asked. He was getting annoyed. Oh, the dead girl frowned. Good question. Maybe, I think. Jake sighed. It'll have to do. He waved his staff over the table. Open sesame. The restraints popped open. The vampire sat up slowly. Bloody hell, I've never felt so weak. She held a shriveled arm out to Jake. Help a girl up? Jake hesitated. Weakened or not, letting a starved vampire hold onto him wasn't a smart decision, especially while his wrist was bleeding. To hell with it. Jake held out his arm. The vampire used it to support herself as she swung off the table. She swayed a little, but managed to stay on her feet. "Oh, thank goodness," she muttered. "I was worried you'd have to carry me." She looked up at Jake with what he assumed was supposed to be a winning smile. "I'm Valeria. Valeria Loren." "Jake Mundane." Jake gave her a nod. "Nice to meet you." "Likewise." Valeria gave him a nod. She scowled up at the flashing green lights. "We better get moving. That alarm's going to bring a lot of guards." "No, it won't," Jake informed her. "Every neural on the station's asleep." He frowned. "Comatose, technically." "All of them?" Valeria stared at him in surprise. "Wow! Okay. Did you take out the robots too?" Jake blinked. "Robots?"